All right, ladies and gentlemen, so as promised, here we are on the Mac OS, and I also downloaded the newest version of Photoshop. So this is going to be a sneak peek at Photoshop CC 2015, but the newer version, the one that came out in the summer. And as I said, I've only launched it a few times before, so let's explore it together. I'm going to go here to Photoshop. And when I first open it up, look, I can see that the opening screen is a little bit different. Up at the top here, it shows me my recent files. So here's different files that I played with. Here's libraries, which I'm not really using right now, and presets. Now, I love this because we can normally get these in the standard new dialog box, which I'll show you in just a second. But I like having the presets all sort of laid out here because it's kind of cool to be able to look at all of the different ways that they're set up. So this one I can see is set up in inches at 300, but this is pixels at 72. So it kind of gives me a nice preview of how the different files are set up and which ones I might be able to use. And I kind of like being able to compare them this way. Now, the other thing that I can do is I can click on the new dialog box, and here's a really great example of some of the differences. The thing that's most obvious is going to be the visual look. And we can see that the buttons look a little bit different here, but they're still the same buttons with the same names. And all of the options are the same as well. So when new versions of Photoshop come out, you don't need to worry about upgrading and feel like you need to stay back in the version you're at because that's what you learned in. What you need to learn to do is make adjustments really quick, because the bottom line is that if we're sitting around a table and I point at a pencil and I say, could you hand me that pencil? It doesn't matter if the pencil is yellow or blue, just like it doesn't matter if this button is flat or kind of has a 3D look. Either way, you're still going to click OK. You're still going to click cancel, which is what we're going to do here, because I want to open some documents. You can see there's a really great shortcut here for it, or I could, of course, just go to the File menu where Open has always been, and probably always will be. Now, I have encouraged you also earlier in the book, when we talked about this in Chapter 1, to save everything in your Pictures folder. And the reason that I do that is some people don't have a system at all, and they tend to lose files on their computer. So the Pictures folder exists on every operating system, so I knew that that was a safe place that everybody would have. But I want to tell you now about another great tip. Using folders like your iCloud Drive, Dropbox, your Creative Cloud files. These are all folders that are automatically backed up, either by Adobe or Apple or their operating system, or maybe a third-party service like Dropbox. This is the smartest way to save your work. And if you have a Creative Cloud subscription, then the Creative Cloud Files is a great place to store everything because it's included with your Creative Cloud purchase. This often isn't enabled on shared computers and in school labs and things, because if everybody connected to their folder, it would just keep downloading everybody's stuff all the time, and it just gets out of control really fast. But on your own personal machine, when you have access to it, storing your files, your important documents in any sort of backed up folder is a really great plan. So I'm going to work out of my Creative Cloud Files folder, and here is my Photoshop folder where I've already downloaded and unzipped this Chapter 5 folder. And in there, we've got a few different files. We've got Beaver Bull and PB Lion. And I'm going to hold Control or Command, and that way I can select files and they don't need to be next to each other. Remember that tip, it's a really great one. The same trick works on layers, but it works in your operating system too. So remember that one because it comes in handy. Now I'm going to click Open. Okay, so basically looks the same, right? We've got our panels on the right. We've got the same options bar across the top. We've got our toolbar on the left. One thing I noticed is that some of the icons look a little different. Like the Band-Aid used to have a little bit more of a curve for this icon, but I can still tell that it's a Band-Aid. So this doesn't throw me off. Another thing I just noticed is that the Move tool and the Selection tools are swapped. The Move tool used to be in the right-hand box, and now they swapped the places. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's a smart move, and it doesn't throw me off. The point here is that Photoshop will continue to change. Photoshop's becoming much more powerful, and with the Creative Cloud subscription, you get the free updates every year, normally twice a year. So it's almost like having 2 birthdays every year where Adobe gets you really cool gifts. So don't be intimidated by this. Like I said, I'm jumping into this on my Mac, which I don't often use, and also on the newest version of Photoshop, which I've never really used. I opened it just to sort of see what it was like, but I was working on the book when it came out, and we decided to just sort of freeze it right there instead of re-record and rewrite and re-grab all the screens. but I wanted to do at least one video in this book on the different OS and on the different version of Photoshop so that you could see if you need to make the shift, it's no big deal. You can figure it out. And when in doubt, there's always web searches. The last thing I want to do really quick was just talk to you about using images for this. I don't mind if you do your own images. I actually prefer that most of the time. On this project, it might help the very first time you go through it to do it with our pictures. This is a short chapter. There's only 10 videos, and it might help if you use our images just to kind of help with some of the more confusing items that we're going to be discussing. We're leveling up a lot of things we've already discussed, but we're leveling up pretty quick and pretty fast on these. So it might help to follow along, but if you want to do your own, that's great. Let me just give you a really important tip for a project like this. You can see I've got my lion that's kind of looking a little bit off camera. My bull is also looking a little bit off camera. That's critical. If you decide to get your own images, make sure that the animals that you're using are sort of looking the same direction away from the camera. It doesn't matter if they're flipped. You can see that here we've got the lion and the bull are looking different directions, but I know that I can just flip this image in Photoshop and have the bull look the other direction. But let's say that I went over to Pixabay to grab some new pictures, which is one of my favorite places to grab stuff for school work. And here I already have images of warthogs up. I did a search for warthogs because they've got these great looking tusks. But here you can see I've got this face where it's looking sideways. It's really hard to blend parts of animals when the one animal is looking off to the side and then the other one's looking straight at the camera. Now, if all I was going to grab was just this horn, it might work. But we can see here that I have warthogs looking straight at the camera. Here I have one looking a little bit to the side. It's generally easiest when the animals are sort of looking the same angle away from the camera. Otherwise, if you put horns or antlers on an animal that didn't have them before, they'll look crooked or sideways. So just think about that if you choose to grab your own images. For an intro video, this might have been a little bit long if we were just talking about opening up images. But I wanted to talk to you about the Mac OS and also about how to update to Photoshop, a new version, and not be intimidated by it. And then also just give you that tip on how to find images that will really work well for your project.